Hey guys, today I'm just going to go over your study guide. Remember, 20 of these questions are going to be on your Unit 2 test, and this is over rational numbers and operations, which means integers, fractions, decimals, percents, and we're adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. Make sure you've attempted the study guide before you've looked at this video, and then feel free to skip around to any questions that you think you need help on. All right, let's get started. Question 1 says, what's the multiplicative inverse, which just means reciprocal, of 12? Remember, 12 is the same thing as 12 over 1. There's always an invisible 1 under a number. And a reciprocal means flipped fraction. So we're just going to flip that fraction over, and we should get 1 over 12. The sign does not change, so it should be C. Number 2 says, what's the additive inverse or opposite of 8 over 7? The opposite of a number is if it's positive 8 over 7, it would be a negative 8 over 7. So that would be D. Basically, what adds with that number to get it to 0? What's its zero pair? 3 says, which of these fractions has the least value, so which is the smallest? So let's go ahead and visually represent these. This is how you might want to think about these fractions, is visually. Let's start with 1/4. Remember that bottom number of the fraction, the denominator, tells you how many parts of the circle there are. And then that top number tells you how many of them we're counting. So one of those 4 counts here. 1/12 is going to be really small because we split it. Now it's in fourths. Now it's in sixths, eighths, tenths, and now 12ths. And then only one of those counts. So just one little sliver. The next one's 1/9. It's one of these is shaded. That's still bigger than 1/12, if you can see, because splitting it into ninths is still more than splitting it into twelfths. 2/3, you can see automatically that just one of those is just about bigger than everything else. So 2/3 is definitely more than everything else. So the one that's the least has to be 1/12. It's got the smallest on the top with the biggest on the bottom. So the smaller on the top and the bigger the denominator, that tells you it's the smallest fraction. Number 4 says, what is 13 over 2 as a mixed number? Remember that line means divide. So we're going to think about how many times 2 can go into 13 evenly. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So it comes in here. It can go in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times evenly. And it would have 1/2 left over. So A. Number 5 says, your Uncle Troy says he will arrive at your house at 1:45. What time should he arrive? So let's just real quick take apart what this word quarter means. That means fourths. Remember, there's 4 quarters in a dollar. So we'll divide our clock into fourths. What we're looking at here on the clock is 1:45. It's almost 1, and on the minute hand, it has a quarter to go. Remember, a quarter of the clock is from here to here. So if you count, that's 5, 10, 15 minutes. So it's 15 minutes until 1 o'clock. That means that it is 12:45 p.m. Number 6 says, which is false about the fraction 1/3. Let's take each multiple choice option at a time. It says 1/3 is approximately 33%. So 1/3 as a decimal is 0.3 repeating. That is never going to end. So it's 0.33333333. So when it's a percent, I would move the decimal 2 times. So it'd be about 33%, 33.3%. So that's true. B says 1/3 has a non-terminating decimal. Remember, terminate means ends. Non-ending means that it goes on forever. Like I said, that little line on top of it means that it is a non-terminating decimal. That's true. C says its reciprocal is 3. Remember, reciprocal means flipped fraction. So reciprocal, if I flip these, 3 over 1, that's the same thing as 3. So that's true. So that only leaves us with D. 1/3 is greater than 1/2. That is false. Remember, 1/2 would be about like this. 1/3 is only like this. So 1/3 would be less. Number 7 says express 0.1846 as a fraction in simplest form. So let's start by labeling what each place value is. Remember, it starts with the tenths place, then the hundredths, then the thousandths, then the 10,000ths place. So when I would say this number, I would say it's 1,846 10,000ths. So the number I would write that over is 10,000. So that's where I'll start. And I don't see that as an answer choice. That means that I can reduce this. Since it says simplest form, that's another hint. I need to simplify. I know that these are both even numbers. So I'm going to divide both of them by 2. If I divide this by 2, that means it's going to have a 5,000 on the bottom. And I can already see that that's going to be an answer option for me. But just to make sure, 2 goes into 18 9 times. 2 goes into 4 2 times. And into 6 3 times. So that 923 over 5,000 would be my new fraction. And I know that that's in simplest form because there's nothing that divides into 923 and 5,000. So A for number 7. Number 8 is kind of a hard one. It says, on Monday, Shantana's hair was 8 centimeters long, Remember that variable h just represents some number. We don't know what number that is, and it doesn't matter for this problem. It says she got a haircut, so now her hair is only 75% of that length. So 75% of h. We don't know what h is. Remember in math, we can stop right there. Of means times. So 75% times h. I don't see that option, but I do see something else that means 75%. Remember, other ways to put 75% could be 0.75 or 3/4. 0.75 is the same thing as 75 cents or 3/4 out of 4. So we can see 3/4 times h is an option. That's A. And number 9, the hint for number 9 is just right there in number 8. 3/4 out of 4 is the same thing as 75 cents. So C. Number 10 says, what's the decimal equivalent of 5/12? So without a calculator, you're going to have to divide. But before we start doing that, let's just look at our answer choices. Let's rule one out really quick. Just looking at the answer choices, we can rule out A because 5.12 is $5.12. 5/12 isn't even a full dollar. That doesn't even make sense. That's a fraction, and A is a whole number and a fraction. So we're going to mark out A just to start with right off the top. When you're dividing these, you know that 12 can't go into 5, so you put a decimal and you put some zeros in. 12 can go into 50, and 12 can go into 50 4 times. So 12 can go into 50 4 whole times. 12 times 4 is 48. So there's 2 left. I bring down the next 0. 12 goes into 20 only 1 time. 12 goes into 20 1 time. So we do that, subtract the 12 off. That means there's 8 left. Bring down that 0. 12 goes into 80 6 whole times. 12 times 6 is 72. So 80 minus 72 is 8. And then you can start seeing we're going to get this repeating pattern here. We're going to get 6 times again. And that, so you can see that 6 starting to repeat. And if you're looking at the answer choices while you're going through this, as you should realize that when you have that 0.41, you already have your answer. You should already know that it's D. So it's 0.416 with the repeating 6. Number 11 says write 9/10 as a percent. This is an easy one. If you make 9 out of 10 free throws, if you got 9 out of 10 on a quiz, that's good. You got a 90%. So you should be able to know that by heart. But just in case, as a decimal, 9/10 is 0.9. And remember, percent means out of 100, so move the decimal 2 times. Fill that space with a 0, and it's percent. Number 12 is the same way. 12 1/100ths is already out of 100. So percent means out of 100. It's out of 100. That's just 12%. You can also think of it as 0.12. Move the decimal 2 times. 12%. So B. 13 asks what's 4% as a decimal. So the decimal in 4% is right here. And since it's already out of a percent, we're going to move it to the left 2 times. That means that we have 1 blank space filled with a 0. So 0.04 is 4% as a decimal. So A. 14 says which amount is the largest. When you have all these different types of numbers, these are all rational numbers. You have percents, decimals, and fractions. We're going to convert them all to a decimal to compare them. So 0.36 is already written as a decimal. Remember, percent means out of 100, so we're just going to go ahead and move it back 2 to the left. So 0.45. For 12%, that's something as 0.2. Remember, you move the decimal 2 times to the left for it to be written as a decimal. And then for this last one, 40 out of 100. So that's something as 0.4 or 0.40 if it's 40 hundredths. So it says which amount is the largest. The biggest number of these is 0.45 or 45%. So it'd be A. Number 15 says which of these is a correct way to express 2 out of 100 or 2 hundredths. Remember, this is like having 2 pennies. So if you look at A, 0.2, remember, that's like having 20 cents. That's not the same thing as having 2 pennies. That's like 2 dimes. So we're going to cross out A. 0.2%, that means it's out of 100. So if it's 0.2%, we have to move the decimal back 2 more times. So that'd be 0.00002. That's too many zeros. We're not doing B. C says 1/10. Is that the same thing as 2 hundredths? No. 1/10 is like 0.1. And then 2 hundredths is like 0.02. So those are totally different numbers. 2 pennies and a dime is totally different. And then 2 hundredths is how I read it. So obviously it would be D. 16 is one we should know by heart. It says what is 50% as a simplified fraction? 50%, so 50 out of 100. If you reduce that, you should get 1/2. If you're a 50% free throw shooter, you should make 1 for every 2 shots. So C. 17 says name the decimal equivalent to 1/4. Remember, if you have 1/4, you have a quarter. So that would be 0.25. 18 says change this decimal to a percent. Percent means out of 100, so we're going to move the decimal 2 times. 1, 2. So it becomes 52.8%. So B. 19 says put these fractions in order from least to greatest. 1/4, 1/6, and 1/2. They all have the same numerator, so you're looking at the denominator. And the rule with fractions is if it has a bigger denominator, it's actually a smaller portion. If it has 1/6, that's not as many as having 1/4. If you want to check, you can make them all decimals, but I can just look at this and tell you that it's C. 1/6 is the smallest piece of pie, the smallest piece of pie or the smallest pizza. 1/4 is a little bigger. It's got only 4 cuts, and then a half. Think about it like pizza or pie or money. 20 says list in ascending order. Ascending means from least to greatest. It's getting bigger every time. And you have 4 different types of rational numbers. So let's make them all decimals to compare. The easiest one to start with would be 56%. Remember, percent means out of 100, so you move it 2 times like it's in the hundredths place. Now you have 50.56. The next one I would look at is 5/4. That's like having 5 quarters. If you have 5 quarters, you have $1.25. 1.07 is already in decimal form. And then 4/5 will make, think about it like times 2 for each one. Think about it out of 10. Remember, 4/5 and 8/10 are the same thing. And so if we have 8/10, we have 0.8. So now we can see which ones get bigger. We start with 0.56 as the smallest. So we're looking at either C or D. And then the next one up is 0.8. Think about it like money. So that's that 4/5. So it has to be D. 21 is the same type of thing, but it says order the numbers from least to greatest. And you should see that you have some negative numbers. So let's go ahead and just spot those negatives and pull those out first. So you have negative 0.5 and you have negative 9/10. Let's write 9/10 as a decimal. Remember, 9/10 is having a 9 in the tenths place. And if it's negative, we're going to compare these two on a number line. Which one would you rather owe me? Would you rather owe me 50 cents or would you rather owe me 90 cents? Which one is greater negatively? Negative 0.9 is the bigger negative. So that one's less. That one's farther from 0. So that one right away should tell you the answer. If you can just figure out just the negatives, then you can see that it's A. And in case you were wondering, here is A as decimals. So in case you wanted to check all these as decimals, this is the order it would go in as they're all decimals. 22 gives you 4 people, and it's asking you to compare their times in a relay race. The fastest time is going to be the smallest number. So let's line them up and then compare them. So it says Marcia's time was 56.24 seconds. Jim's was 56.20. And watch, I'm going to go ahead and line these up with the decimal in the same spot. So the tens place is matching the tens place. The ones place matching the ones. Everything's lined up. So when it's like that, I can already see that Jim ran it faster than Marcia. So let's compare that to Kyle. Kyle ran it in 56.287. So remember, there's a 7 here, but after this 4, there's a 0. After this 0, there's a 0. There's zeros all the way down. So that doesn't even matter. Remember, when we compare decimals, we're looking at the number right next to it, right here. So we're looking at this category first, and then we're going to see right now that Jim is still the fastest based on the 100th place right here with the 8, 0, and the 4, 0 is faster because it's smaller. We have one more person to look at. Let's look at Jen's time. It's 56.29. We should be able to see, since that's actually the slowest time so far, that it's already going to be Jim, B. About me eating a pizza, it says I eat 1/3 of a large Little Caesar sausage pretzel crust pizza, the best pizza of all time. And it says it's so good that I eat another 1/3 of a pizza. So this is a pizza cut into thirds. 1/3 plus 1/3. That's going to always be 2/3. But just one more way to look at it. Here's 1/3 of a pizza. If I add another third, then I will have eaten 2/3. Since it's asking how much I've eaten in total. I've eaten 2/3 in total. 24 says that a credit card customer owes $325.60. They only make a payment of $120. So if they pay on it, and then it's asking how much do they still owe, I'm going to subtract. I want to take off that 120. And the important part here is that I line up my decimals. So I want to make sure 120 is in the 100 spot, the 10 spot, and the 1 spot. And then if I have a decimal here, there's a 0, 0 here. So there's no decimal afterward. And then I'm just going to subtract like normal. 0 minus 0 is 0. 6 minus 0 is 6. Already I can look at my answer choices. You should be always doing that as you solve a problem like this. Cross out this one, cross out this one. The decimal number is going to be 60. And then 5 minus 0 is 5. So now you're still between the B and D here. And then this is where you start separating them. 2 minus 2 is 0. And 3 minus 1 is 2. So then you can definitely see here that D matches your answer. Number 25 is a question that's asking you to subtract two mixed numbers. So that plus sign that says 9 and a half, or 9 and a fifth minus 1 and 4/5. When you have mixed numbers, you don't want to subtract or add yet. You need to make them both regular improper fractions first. So we're going to have an improper fraction here. Remember, we convert a mixed number to a fraction like that by timesing these two and then adding what's on top. So 5 times 9 is 45, plus the 1 on top is 46, and then you keep the number on the bottom. So 9 and 1/5 is the same fraction as 46 fifths. Then we'll do the same thing for this other fraction. 5 times 1 is 5, plus the 4 is 9 on top, with the 5 staying on the bottom. They have the same denominator, so I can subtract these fractions. 46 minus 9 is 37. Over 5, the 5 stays on the bottom. It's out of fives, it's out of fifths. And I'm looking at my answer choices. Since 37 over 5 is not an answer choice, I see mixed numbers. I know I need to convert this improper fraction back into a mixed number. So I think 5 goes into 37 7 times. So it comes in 7 full times to make 35 with 2 left over out of that original 5. 5 and 2/5 is an answer. So it's C. 26, you're comparing two couch sizes. Sandy's is 6/7. Mike's is 4/7. They have the same denominator, and it says how much taller. If it's saying how much taller is it, that's asking you for a subtraction problem. You're asking to compare these two. You should be able to just subtract because they have the same denominator. The 7 is on the bottom. 6 minus 4 is 2 over 7. So it's B, 2/7 of a foot. 27 is comparing Mike and Sally again. This time he has to walk 0.7 miles, and Sally has to travel 9/10 of a mile. How much further does Mike have to walk? So again, when you see how much further and you're comparing their distances here, you're going to want to subtract. So we don't have two fractions. We have a decimal and a fraction. So we have two different kinds of rational numbers. But I know when I read 0.7, I'm reading that as 7/10. So one way you could do this is to write 7/10. And you know that Sally went farther. She went 9/10. So you can do 9/10 minus 7/10, and you have 2/10. I see that's not an answer choice. So I'm going to go ahead and, before I do anything else, just double check to make sure my fraction is in simplest form. It's not. 2 can go into both of these. So I'm going to divide the whole thing by 2 over 2, and I'm going to get 1/5. So I can see that it's A. Another way to do this is to compare them as decimals. If you read 9/10 and you like that as 0.9, and you want to do 0.9 minus 0.7, you'd get the same thing. You'd get 0.2, and then you'd have to realize 0.2 is the same thing as 1/5. Either way works. You should get A either way. 28 is a word problem, so it might look a little hard, but it's exactly like the integer problems we've seen before. It says there's an average overnight temperature in Alaska. It's 8.4 degrees, so I plotted that here on the number line. It's not to scale, but let's just say it's in the positive side, so we know it's over there. We know that when Mr. Jenkins went, his overnight low that he recorded was negative 2.1 degrees, so I recorded that over here. So that's over here. And it says how much colder or warmer was the temperature that he recorded. So we can answer that right away. He recorded a temperature that is colder because negative 2.1 is way colder than 8.4. So his temperature is colder. So we can automatically rule out D. Can't be warmer. And it says how much colder was it? How much colder was it than 8.4? So if it says how much more of something than something else, it's asking for subtraction. So I'm going to look at this on a number line. The distance between negative 2.1 and 8.4, we'll start by just getting to 0. So to get from negative 2.1 to 0, you have to add 2.1. And to get up to 8.4, you need to add 8.4. So when I add those two numbers together, I should get 10.5. So it would be 10.5 degrees colder. 29 says find 3/5 of 4 and 1/3. Remember, when we do math like this, we're not ever going to do any math with mixed numbers. We only want fractions and fractions, like regular, improper, numerator, denominator fractions. So let's start by converting 4 and 1/3 into a mixed number. Remember, when you multiply, these two, and then add what's on top. So we'll do 4 times 3 is 12, and 12 plus 1 is 13 over 3. And I'm just going to rewrite that 3 because that's bothering me. So now that I have 4 1/3 as an improper fraction, what I'm going to do now is just multiply straight across. 13 times 3 is 39. 5 times 3 is 15. None of my answer choices are improper fractions that match this, so I want to first check to make sure I can't write this as a mixed number. So let's just do our multiples of 15. 15 times 2 is 30. So we can already see that 15 only goes into 39 2 times evenly, and then we have 9 left over out of 15. That still doesn't match our multiple choice options, but it's close to C, so you might want to go ahead and just put C here, but let's just double check just to make sure. We want to reduce this even further. We know that 9/15 can be reduced because 3 goes into 9 and goes into 15. So 3 goes into 9 3 times. So your new equivalent fraction is 2 and 3. 3 goes into 15 5 times. So we have 2 3/5. That matches C. C is your answer for number 29. 30 is kind of hard. It says, which is not an equivalent expression, that just means equal, to the quotient, which means divide, of 3/4 and 1/2. So let's just write out 3/4 divided by 1/2. That's where we start with this. We should know by now that we don't divide fractions. We multiply by the reciprocal. So that means the keep, change, flip. So we'll rewrite this expression. We'll keep the first number, so we'll keep 3/4. We change the divide to a times, and then we need the reciprocal of 1/2, which means the flipped fraction, which is 1/2 changes to 2 over 1. Now we can multiply, because when we multiply, we just multiply straight across. Before we do that, we'll just check the multiple choice answers. We see that 3/4 times 2 is what we have right now. This and this match, so it cannot be A. And let's go ahead and multiply. 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 1 is 4. So 6/4, that also matches B. So that is another equivalent expression. And then you should see that 6/4 can be simplified because 2 goes into 6 and into 4. So we can divide that by 2 over 2. So we have actually, not 4, sorry. We have 3 over 2, which matches with D. So that leaves us with C. C is the answer for number 30. That is not an equivalent expression. 31 says Coco owes her 3 friends $5.60 each. We know that word each means to multiply, so it's $5.60 times 3. So you should get D for number 31. 32 says Mr. Mullen owes $288.40 on his card. He would like to make 4 equal payments. How much will each payment be? So if we have the total and he wants to divide it up into 4 equal payments, we know that that's division. So we'll do 288.4 divided by 4. Real quick, just looking at our answer choices, we know if we're dividing a number like 288, that's the bigger number, that's the total. Our division, our equal payment should be smaller, so it can't be A because A is way bigger. So always make sure that you're double checking your answer choices to cross out anything that doesn't make sense. So there's my work on how to divide this. In 32, you should get D. 33 says, what's 1/3 divided by 3? Remember, every number has an invisible little 1 underneath of it, and we never divide fractions. We're going to keep, change, flip. So we keep the 1/3, change the divide to a times, and flip, that means find the reciprocal of that 3 over 1. So 3 over 1 becomes 1/3, and then you multiply straight across. You get 1/9. That's A for 33. 34 says Keenan and Katie made 3/4 of a gallon of ice cold lemonade. We divide the lemonade equally between 2 paper cups. So we're doing 3/4 divided by 2. So same thing as the last one. We don't divide fractions. We multiply by the reciprocal. And whole numbers like 2 are always over that invisible 1. So we'll keep the first number. 3/4 stays. Change the divide to a times. And then flip 2 over 1 to 1 over 2. And then multiply straight across. You should get 3 over 8. So D for 34. 35 is the same way. We have a Halloween party with 3.5 pounds of candy to divide between 14 goodie bags. So we're dividing 3.5 divided by 14. I don't do operations with mixed numbers, so I want to go ahead and start out by converting 3.5 to an improper fraction. You multiply 2 times 3, which is 6. Add what's on top, which is 7 over 2. Keep what's on the bottom. Then divide by 14. Remember, every number is over 1. And then we want to keep, change, flip to divide. So keep the 7/2 times 1 over 14, and you should get 7 over 28. You can see that might not be an answer option for you, so you should simplify. 7 goes into 7 one time, and goes into 28 4 times. So A for 35. 36 says Greg earns $10.50 per hour and he works 10 hours. So that means we're going to multiply that 10 times that 10 times that 10.50. One quick trick I have is to separate this and do 10 times 10 plus the 10 times 0.5. You think about it like money, it should be really easy. You should know that that's $100 and then 50 cents 10 times is $5. So 100 plus 5 is 105. C is the answer for 36. 37 is kind of tricky, but it's a question asking you about the order of operations. So that's PEMDAS. So we'll look inside the parentheses first, and there's a multiplication inside the parentheses. So we'll just start with 50 times 2.15. One trick I know about multiplying by multiples of 10 is that I can just drop the 0 and multiply by 5. So I know 5 times 5 is 25 and continue multiplying like normal. The only thing different about this once you do that is that since you dropped the 0, your decimal has to move back one. Your decimal was here in the hundredths place, so it's going to stay in the hundredths place. And think about what makes sense for the problem. It's about double 50, so it should be over 100. So I got 107.5. The next step is still in the parentheses. You want to add 50 to that. This time you definitely, when you're adding, you want to make sure that you're lining up your decimal correctly, and then add straight down. The last thing it's asking you to do is to multiply by a half. You should know that that's the same thing as divide by 2. If you times something by a half, that's the same thing as divide by 2. So the easier way to do this would be to divide the number you just got divided by 2. After you divide that, you should see that your answer is A, 78.75. For 38, it's kind of a long problem, so we'll take it apart piece by piece. He starts with 242.5. He deposits that into his account. That means he put it in there, and then he purchases a Bluetooth speaker and has to withdraw half of his money. Withdraw means take out. So he's going to take out half of this. So let's find half of 242.5. A quick trick to this is to look at what's half of the 0.5. Half of 50 cents is 25 cents. And then half of each of these numbers is 121. So this is half of that, and he's taking it out. He's withdrawing it. So you can subtract that off. The next part of the problem says when he receives his next paycheck, he deposits, so he puts in double the original amount. So double that 242.5, and he adds that onto it. So let's find double 242.5. So I got $485, and he's adding that onto it since he's depositing it back in. So you're going to add that up and get your answer A, $606.25. For 39, it says he purchases a computer and a warranty. This is the price of the computer, price of the warranty. So let's find out what that cost is altogether first. So we'll add. And if he wants to pay over 18 months, we're going to divide this between 18 months. This is a hard question without a calculator. And if you've made it this far in the video, I'll go ahead and tell you this question is not on your test. As you can see, I already got 93. So I can go ahead and roll out and figure out that it is A. And then 40, last question, it says it costs $3 plus $2.50 per mile. So 3 plus 2.5 per means times the 8 miles that we traveled. So this is the equation that I would write for this. But then there's that last part that says I left a $1 tip. So I got to make sure I, at the end, add in plus 1. Use your order of operations to realize you got to multiply first. 8 times 2.5 should get 20. Plus 3 plus 1 is 4. So you should know that this is 24, C. All right, guys, that's it. If you made it this far in the video, please put your favorite pizza topping in the comments and let me know if you have any questions. Good luck on your test. Bye.